Hi, this is Kimberly Reuter, business advisor and supply chain expert. And welcome to my podcast, The Morning Mood. Today, I'm going to talk to you about scale and building for scale. It has come up recently, kind of in the last couple of weeks, and several conversations I've had. Not directly, which is always when you know the universe is telling you need to talk about it when it's kind of hinting at the side. So, how did this come up recently for me? One, talking to a young startup which is an inventory accuracy robotics startup. And, they've done their kind of a what I would call a light POC. And, the question is, how do we get big, right? What do we do? And so that kind of kicked off these old muscle memories about building for scale. And then what happened is I talked to my old colleague and dear friend, Andrew Miner. Now, I've mentioned Andrew a few times, and Andrew and I worked together to build Amazon Global, which was or is, still is, I need to get those numbers. I need to ask about that. Is Amazon's direct to consumer cross border offering product. Call it a product. It is a product. And what that technology does, Amazon Global, is it provides a duty and tax calculation, which at the time Amazon guarantees, and I believe they still do, for the international customer. So when the package showed up to their door, they knew exactly how much they were going to pay for it, and there were no surprises. Now, Andrew and I are going to record an architect series, and we are super freaking excited about that because we just started talking, and all the memories came back. And the great thing about doing a lot of stuff in your life is you've done a lot of stuff in your life. The bad thing about doing a lot of stuff in your life is you forget a lot of stuff that you did. And so it's been really great reconnecting with him and talking about how we built an industry first, Amazon Global, and built it with really not a company on our side. I think, we will also hear this message echoed with Carrie Morris when I talk about Carrie Morris and she and I talk about Amazon private label. Amazon Global at the time was not really, it was kind of a last shot when Andrew and I got involved. And so it was just me and Andrew for like the first year building this thing out. And why did scale come up in this conversation? Let me get back to where I started. Is that Andrew reminded me in our first year, we went from goose egg 0, we were selling just books is what we were selling, and we're selling it to 4 European countries, I think. Now, books don't have any duties and taxes, so it doesn't really matter, I don't think, personally. So, he reminded me in our first year, we went from 0 to $50 million in hard goods, so that was not books. 'Cause books was already being sold, and we really couldn't count that. Amazon stocked the ads, let me tell you. Anything that was already existing when I showed up, they're like, if we're already exporting books, you can't count any of that." So and there was no duties, and it wasn't really the use case, to be totally honest with you. So, but we went from 0 to 4 countries, and $50 million in 1 year. Now that's pretty impressive. I'm gonna say, like, that's pretty dang cool, right, that we did that. What's even more impressive, now, I want you guys to keep in mind that what's going on at the time is that we are building tech, we are building new carrier processes, we are building new merchant processes, we are building new website, Amazon.com processes, we are building tech everywhere, we are breaking the mold every day. We just come in and we smash one. So, year one, that's pretty impressive, right? 0 to 50 million. I'm proud of that. You want to hear something that's even more impressive? Just about 4 years later, 200 countries and $11 billion in annual revenue. 11 billion, 50 million to 11 billion. Now the dollars are impressive. I'm gonna give it to you. Like, if you look at the dollars, that's God's damn impressive. You have to keep in mind that I did have a big tailwind called Amazon.com. Like, I was building an Amazon.com funded startup is what it was. Andrew calls it that. Charles calls it that. We all call it that. It was an Amazon.com funded startup. I had one engineer and myself. That was it. I also was supposed to be doing just one job, but after a year, as you guys all know, I ended up building the import department and the export department, and eventually owned hazmat and product compliance worldwide for Amazon. But it all started with Amazon Global. It's where it began. Where it ended up is a whole different place. So scale, right? How do you go from exporting, understanding the export and import regulations for 4 countries to 200 plus 200? There's sanctioned countries we can't get in there. There's a lot of argument about how many countries there really were. It was 200 plus. Technically, I believe the UN recognizes 220. That's what we set and span around a lot. Because even though the UN says it's a country, doesn't mean the country that owns the country says it's a country. And there's about 6 countries that were forever a pain in my ass. Anyway, so how do you do that? How, in under 5 years, run from 0, basically, yeah, not basically 0 to 11 billion? How do you do that? Like, how do you do that? Scale. You have to build at scale. This happens to be something I'm extremely good at. I don't know why. It's a idiot savant thing. I didn't even know I had it until actually I kind of knew I had it. I didn't know I had it until I got to Amazon. I knew I had something, but I didn't know I had this skill to build at scale. One, why is building at scale so important? If you don't build at scale, you will be building forever. And building, if you have ever built anything, costs money. And more importantly, it costs time. And in situations where you're in competitive commerce environment, time is actually more valuable than money. So building at scale is what allows companies like Amazon to run fast. What do you have to do to build something to scale? What does a highly scalable solution look like, right? Because, I talk to people and I've worked with so many companies. I think I've told you guys I've worked with over 40 country companies at this point in my career through everything that I've done, through being a freight forwarder and broker, working, actually being employed by companies, my own consulting gigs, everything, my keynote speaking, workshopping, all of it. Over 40 companies, big and small, everything from me and Walker, steak startup, to Fortune 500, Amazon.com, right? Biggest company in the world. So, how do you build at scale? And how do you do it at all of these levels? From everything from me and Walker selling steaks to shipping every single product possible around the world from Amazon. So, before we get into the how, I want to make sure you understand the why, because I feel like I kind of glossed over that a little bit. And it's really important because a lot of companies will argue with me about this and they will just discard it and say, whatever, we're going to do it our way because we know what we're doing. And you know what they do? They build and 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 build. And maybe they release something, but it's normally shit because they got to rebuild it again because they didn't build it for scale. That is why it is so important to build for scale. Because if you are in a hyper growth mode, and those days of hyper growth in e-commerce have probably passed, the days of what I just told you about building an $11 billion business in under 5 years, those days have gone. But when you're dealing and maybe there's another industry in the e-commerce industry that's probably passed, but there are other industries that are growing that are hyper growth mode. These principles still apply to hyper growth mode, to all industries, especially tech and supply chain, especially business. If you don't build for scale, you will just keep building, because what happens is you build for what you think you need in 6 months, you reach that goal and you got to rebuild again. And I'm talking scrap and rebuild. I'm not talking like make it a little bit better rebuild. I'm talking about companies have to go out there and completely rebuild every year, every 2 years, every 3 years. And you cannot run fast if you're constantly stopping to rebuild. You can't do it. So that is why building for scale is so exceptionally important for organizations that are looking to grow fast, to accelerate. it is about scale. So how do you build for scale? Okay, so I'm telling you why you got to build for scale, how important it is for you to build for scale. And it is the key to why Amazon has been so successful. I'm going to give you some insights and a little bit it's going to surprise you, I think. Number one, you have to be clear about what it is that you're trying to do. What are you trying to do? What are you trying to do? What is the goal that you are trying to accomplish? More importantly, what is the problem that you're solving? What is the outcome that you desire? And what does that look like in 5 years? Yeah, that's what you need in order to understand what you're building. And if you don't have clarity, now, just a little pause here. My consulting company is called Clarity Scale Growth. And this is going to sound real familiar because it is the recipe for accelerated growth. So, back to clarity. You have to be clear about what it is that you're trying to accomplish. How much is it going to cost you? How much time is it going to take? What are the outcomes that you're trying to achieve? I meet so many companies, especially startups, that I'm like, okay, what's your goal? We just want to get our product on the shelves. Okay, that's not a goal. That is a method to a goal. That's a path to a goal. That's a tool to reach a goal. What's the actual goal? And another interesting thing I will tell you is that people will tell you that finance goals are the product of a bigger goal. So you have to be clear about what you're trying to accomplish. Okay. And it can't just be a finance goal. And this is why, because people focus on, I want to make $1 million. That is the outcome of selling 10,000 orders. That is the outcome of getting 5,000 new customers. That is the outcome of having adding 10% more selection. Do you see where I'm going with this? So when people say I have my goal is to make $1 million. That is the outcome of a goal, in my opinion. So we're going to get some finance people to argue with me about that. All right. And I have a great funny story about Pritam, who he denies to this day, but I'm going to save it till he's on here. So because it's funny. All right. So you have to have clarity. What is it that you're trying to accomplish? And what is it going to take to get that $1 million? It's the what it's going to take that really matters, right? Number two, you have to have where do we want to be? And this goes back. I'm going to put these two together because I like to do three. So I'm going to do a 1A and a 1B. So 1B is, and what does that look like? Not 6 months down the road, not a year down the road, not 2 years down the road, 5 years down the road. What does that look like? Okay. And companies, this is where people really struggle. I am not going to lie to you. And sometimes I struggle here too. I'm going to be honest with this podcast. If somebody said, Kim, what does this look in 5 years? I'm like, I have no goddamn idea, but I am just talking it in the mic. So sometimes I don't even take my own advice, but you need to understand where you want to be in 5 years. And again, can't be $5 million. It is where our financial goal or financial outcome is $5 million a year in 5 years. This is what we think that we're going to need to get there. Okay. We need to in year 1, we need to sell this, and this meaning new customers, in year 2, and year 3, and year 4, and year 5. You kinda think this out from this is your business plan, your customer acquisition plan, kinda your 5-year startup plan is really what it is. Now, most of that past 12 months is pretty squishy. I'm not gonna lie about it. Like, it's pretty squishy, and the further you get away from where you are today, like, we're kind of like fudge level maybe here, and we're all the way down to, like, liquids at 5 years. But we have it in a container and we know what it's supposed to look like. And if you don't have that, people have argued with me, well, Kim, if it's so squishy at 5 years, why even bother? You have to have a North Star. Because if you don't know what you want to do, you don't know what you're trying to do in 5 years, you won't build for it. You'll build for what you're doing in 2 years. You will build for what you plan for. 5 years. I don't care how squishy it is. 5. You have to know. So that's 1A and 1B. You have to be clear about what it is that you want to do, and you have to have some idea what it's going to look like in the future. 5 years is a good idea. Most companies, most startups will say, look, anything after 3 years is just, feathers in the wind. And I don't disagree with you, but it does help if you're working in a highly scalable, hyper growth product or industry. Trust me, it helps. Number two, is flexibility. And it's really funny because Andrew and I actually talked about this. We've been reconnecting as part of this planning for the Amazon Global Architect series. Excuse me, coffee break. You can't have the morning mood without the coffee. I'm just sorry about that, my moodies. And I have decided, by the way, that my audience is my moodies. So, hi, my moodies. So, flexibility. And so, back to telling you, Andrew and I were actually talking about this because Amazon Global, when he and I started on the program, there had been some light attempts to sort of get this program up and running, and it had failed over and over again for a variety of reasons. I think more than anything, it was industry expertise. Um, I don't know. I have also been called the bulldog with a bone, so it could have just been personality and being an absolute bulldozer. Could have been that. Not gonna lie about it. But one of the things that Andrew and I talked about, and one of the things that he and I were really good at was flexibility. So he and I are going to get into how we built all this stuff and the details, and we're going to actually get deep on the tech and the business with this one. So I'm super jazzed about that one. But we talked about how flexible we were. And if anybody really knows me, they're going to be like, that I would not call Kim flexible. I'm just going to say that right now. This is not, people would not say that Kim's a big old bamboo just blow it in the wind. More like a big old oak. It's just my leaves might move a little bit. So saying flexibility to some people will seem weird, right? They're going to be like, Kim's not flexible. But what it was that we were flexible about is that Andrew and I were flexible about how. We focused on the what. And that enabled us to build very fast and have quality. What had happened previously is that there had been a lot of focus on the how. On special things, on new things, on new product category, product catalog fields. Lord, let me tell you something. If you're working in a company like Amazon and you're trying to add a field to the product catalog, oh, Lord help you. But this is kind of the approach that was being taken, is that this was a brand new program and it needed all new stuff. If we had truly been a startup and without actually being a startup within Amazon, that kind of maybe work. But when you're trying to build a startup or trying to build something new, and even if you're not, this is the genesis of this applies to all. So hold on. When we were able to take all of that out and say, I need X. I don't care how we get to X. I don't care if I have to run around the room holding a dry eraser. I don't care, long as I don't have to do it a million times. I just need X. And when we opened ourselves up to that flexibility and that focus on the result, the outcome, not focusing on how, focusing on, I need my software, my tech to do X. And in order for it to do X, I need Y. I don't care how we get Y. Y just has to be right and it has to be available when I need it. How do we get Y? Those conversations changed everything. Another great example was we needed attributes in the product catalog. At the time, Amazon was rebuilding the whole entire product catalog structure. And the goal was to reduce product catalog attributes, not add them. So, of course, when I show up to the product catalog team and I'm like, hey, I need product catalog attributes, they're immediately like, here's our ticket, fill it out, blah, blah. I'm like, no, we've not met yet. I don't do that ticket thing. We do the ticket later after we've negotiated the deal. It's like buying a car. We negotiate first and then we sign the contract. So that's how I did it. It worked. But the conversation with them previously, and this is why they were so shut down, was we need a new attribute. And they're like, we're not adding in attributes for you. Like, it's not going to happen. Well, look, you know what, man? I don't actually need a new attribute. I just need an attribute. I need a place to signify that this product is available for international shipping and to hold an HTS code. I need 12 numerics and an alpha. That's it. What you call Where it comes from, where it sits, what it was before, I don't care as long as it's got the characters that I need, the length that I need, and it's alphanumeric. That's all I care about. I don't care. And you know what? An issue that had been going on for years was resolved in a matter of weeks because there were attributes in the product catalog that were not being used. They were just dormant data fields. I didn't give two shits what you called it. I don't care. As long as my tech guy, my software can build software to ping that and get it, and it keeps on trucking down my order pipeline, zero shits given. In fact, I don't even know what those attributes were called. I don't to this day. They were not, uh, I can guarantee you, they were not eligible for international shipping in HTS code. They were entirely different. They were things that were not used, and we didn't care. We did not get hung up on the fact that it had to be called that. What we cared about was that we needed to store a data element that we could call on in the order pipeline in order to give the customer the best customer experience. So flex also building your MVP, building to 80%, being agile, test and learn, test and learn, test and learn, test and learn. Do not build for special. Back to part of flexibility, extra part of flexibility. Do not build for special. You build for everything. And I think I'm kind of over time, so we might have to go some deeps on these. All right. So I'm going to come back. I'm going to talk to you guys more about flexibility and what it means to build for flexibility and scale. But before I leave you, I want to leave you with my third one. And I'm just going to touch on it very lightly because, as we know, I'm running out of time and I promised 20 minutes. I'm doing my best. The last one is this, and this is the one that's going to surprise you. And this is the one that we're going to come back. We're going to come back to flexibility and storytelling because I talked a lot about problem and clarity. So we're going to come back to this one, but it is this storytelling, bringing people along. Tiana talked about this in our greatest lesson. You cannot do it alone. And one of the things that Andrew and I, for whatever reason, we could tell a story. We could get people on board. We bought them along. We didn't shove it down their throats. We didn't jump up and down. We didn't say it's a Bezos said. We didn't act like assholes. We bought them along and said, look, we're trying to build this thing. It's really good for the customer. This is what we need. Yada, yada, yada. How can we help you? Back to flexibility, kind of flexibility and storytelling mixed together. We did a lot of horse trading. A lot of horse trading. I'll give you my engineer. They can work on this. Can I write my, horse trading? Lots of it. I wrote a lot of documents, sent a lot of bad messages. I did work for other people just so they would do work for me. But storytelling, bringing people along is the number 3 in building for scale. I'm going to get deeper on these. I had a funny feeling I was going to go over, but I want to leave you with something. And if you're out there and you're building something, you got big goals and it's going to be massive, tune in. I got some tips for you. All right. Thank you, my Moodies. We'll chat tomorrow.